All right, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're doing well and that you enjoyed a safe and healthy weekend. Thank you for joining us today. Like Emily, if you feel so inclined to, feel free to turn on your video. It's the pretty much closest thing that we can get to being in person and seeing each other. So again, I'm just so grateful that everyone's here today and that you have hopefully you have some questions that I can help answer for you and provide you all some updates. So let's dig into it. I first want to follow up on the executive order regarding the Green Bandana project. This is a project that's been 3 years in the making here at Penn State. It's been championed by quite a lot of universities across the Big Ten, including Wisconsin, Indiana University, Michigan State University, Nebraska, and more. On Wisconsin's campus alone, 6,000 students are signed up as of 2019, which was the last recorded data prior to COVID-19. Signed up as support system networks who have been given bandanas and given the resource cards needed to help students do two things. That's first, help recognize the decrease in stigma of surrounding mental health, as well as increase their access to resources around campus. We intend to do the exact same thing here. We are currently working with the National Green Bandana Project. We're in the process of expanding what we have been in the works really over the last 3 years, as I mentioned, and are ready to ultimately put the final pieces to this puzzle together and help get our students some resources that they desperately need and that oftentimes are just simply not accessible to students. We'll be purchasing resource cards and green bandanas for the Department of Health and Wellness to serve as a permanent service of that department using presidential discretionary funds. And we look forward to cooperating with CAPS and the University Health Services in the future to ensure that the program is as sustainable as possible from year to year. Very excited about that. And I hope that you do take a look for all of the green bandanas that I'm sure you'll see around campus. I also am incredibly proud to announce Rennie Richardson as our incoming, or as my nominee, I should say, for the Executive Director of Rights and Equity. The Rights and Equity Department is a new entity within the executive branch designed to help students, again, get the resources they need to learn their academic rights, their tenant rights, on-campus rights, whatever kind of rights are necessary, and that all students have as members of the Penn State community, as well as increase educational equity on campus in any means necessary. Rennie is currently a sophomore in the Integrated Masters of Accounting program, which is, I think, phenomenal, in the Smeal College of Business. He's involved in fun as an entertainment captain and as a volunteer for Atlas. Rennie is also a member of the Transforming Education Steering Committee and meets with the Office of Educational Equity to help address current issues in our Penn State community. Rennie says that he enjoys playing music in the pep band, working out, and traveling. Me too, Rennie. Well, I'm incredibly excited to bring him forward to the General Assembly tomorrow for his confirmation, and I hope things go smoothly, as I'm sure they will. He's done an excellent job as our Deputy Director of Education, or sorry, as our Director of Educational Equity, and I'm sure will do phenomenal in this job too. I'd also like to touch briefly on State Patty's Day. As you can imagine, I was very dismayed to see quite a lot of students not following COVID guidelines, not wearing masks and gathering in large numbers. I think that many of us saw this coming, and ultimately it goes without saying that they don't represent Penn State's values or the majority of Penn State students who did end up masking up to ensure the safety of their friends and family. But I am happy to announce that at least in some way the UPUA is able to provide students who might have been in some sort of hot water in any sort of case connection with our SORA program. This Student and Organization Rights Advisors program has been sort of renamed over the years. Student Conduct Advisors was the last name, but over the last 50 years, we've been helping provide students just peer-to-peer advice through the conduct process. And like always, students can find that resource on the UPUA's website as well. And I'd encourage them to check that out as time goes on as well. The Department of Sustainability has been hard at work with their Ecosia Campaign. This is something that Alexi and I ran on as something that we believe is a really good move forward towards sustainability that Penn State can do by adopting this universally. But in the meantime, while we work on that bit of a hump, we are finding that plenty of students are loving the ability to simply give a search as they just as they would on Google and end up planting some trees while they're at it. So we're encouraging the students transition to Ecosia as their primary search engine and can follow that campaign at UPUA_sustain on Instagram. Please do give that a follow as well if you haven't already. They're doing some incredible work. I'm also excited to announce an executive order authorizing funds for the Women's Empowerment Roundtable website. This is a website that has been in the works for some time under the coordination of various coordinators. I've been working closely with Representative Bose to ensure that it has the resources it needs to succeed over the next few years. Particularly, we're funding the first year, but hopefully we'll continue to see this as a sustained effort to ensure that this space continues to exist, especially during a month as important as Women's History Month, as we currently find ourselves engaged in. So I'm very excited to announce that. And lastly, just touching on the town hall from last week. This is a very interesting scenario. You don't typically have something during class that so directly applies to what you're doing. I'm taking a class called Civic and Community Engagement, CivCom 211. If you haven't taken it, highly encourage it. It talks about the differences between, right now, town halls and town meetings. Right? Town meetings, the latter, really engage the community that they found themselves in. Citizens were able to directly participate in their democracy and help hold their elected leaders accountable to the decisions they're making and really cooperate with them to find a good solution for everybody. Whereas town halls, as the classes argued and as papers that we've discussed has argued, are mere spectacles, right? The idea that we're here to answer questions, but that in somehow is democracy itself. And so taking this class on the same day that we had a town hall, we decided that we'd like to try something new and frankly not just put on a show, as I think the UPUA has done before, and find a way to really integrate students into that process. Primarily, what Lexi and I did on the campaign trail is something I think we'd like to revisit, and that is a listening session. Not so much where people are asking us questions or we're announcing anything, not a press conference for the students, if you will, where we announce something, but rather working with them in the moment to find the best solution to various problems and ideas that they might have and wish to see the UPUA take on. We should have that announced sometime, if not by the end of this week, early next week. And I do apologize for the confusion on the scheduling there, but I appreciate you bearing with us as we try some new things before we kick the can out the door, if you will. With that, I would be, I believe that's very last thing. Our Department of Health and Wellness has created an Instagram as well, in which we will be sharing resources for students who might need them. As I mentioned, it will be housing the Green Bandana Project, and you'll be able to find a lot of the resources that we're sharing, such as resource cards and the like on that at UPUA_health and wellness. If you haven't been able to tell, the brand is pretty much at UPUA_ and then whatever the entity might be. But I wanted to give a huge shout out to Hattie Truesdale for her work in making that happen. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions or anything like that. Ryan? Ryan, I think you're on mute. Sorry. It's the AirPods. It's always the AirPods.
Can you hear me now?
Hey, Ryan. Yes, okay. I can. Good to see you.
I was wondering if you could touch on a little bit your administration's decision to create these new departments, and also there's been a big increase in use of social media across the board with different departments. So I'm wondering if you could touch on a little bit like the motivation behind that and what representatives have been discussing to kind of be motivated to create social media outlets for their departments, which is something we haven't really seen before.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we began to notice on the campaign, and unfortunately long before, was a lack of outreach. It was visible in both the UPUA structure and in its goals and initiatives, the sort of things it would take on. A good example is the fact that last year we had a committee on outreach, right, in which certain individuals, certain representatives, not all representatives, were encouraged to communicate with their constituents. And even now, you have a Department of Outreach that functions almost like the Department of State. Really, we represent the UPUA to various entities across the university and beyond, but the fact that we weren't encouraging representatives to get in touch with their constituents was a serious problem. With the Department of Outreach, now we have been able to help encourage those sorts of events, and we hope to encourage those individual, for example, town hall representative town halls in the future. But other departments, for example, civic engagement, health and wellness, rights and equity, these are all things which the UPUA has done a terrific job in getting the ball rolling on, but at times has let fall through the crack. So last year, as for example, Gov Affairs Chair, we were charged with overseeing a lot of the voter registration and civic engagement efforts of the UPUA. As chair of the committee, I ran the committee on, or the PSU Votes Roundtable. And the trouble is we literally pass resolutions every year recreating these roundtables. And they are in general not something that is necessarily sustained from year to year because there's nobody to hold accountable to. They weren't, right, nobody is elected to serve as the individual leaders of these roundtables. What the Women's Empowerment Roundtable has done differently is set up a coordinator structure in which members can lead the group who aren't necessarily just UPUA representatives. But as time goes on, I think we'll find additional students out of the UPUA taking the reins and contributing to that group. And through the civic engagement department, we're able to hone in on our voter registration year round. It's not something that should end when assemblies terms are up and representatives terms are up, when my term is up. But I want to make sure that voter registration and other resources are available to students all the time. That's been the idea, creating a more sustainable student government. Thanks for the question. Ethan?
Hi, Zach. I just had a quick question about the town hall slash town meeting that you were discussing. I was wondering if you could kind of talk about what would you consider like an ideal town meeting for both UPUA and the student body?
Great question. There was a meeting last year, I think it was one of the last meetings of the assembly for the 14th assembly, in which we had a committee of the whole. This is essentially an opportunity for reps to have open discussions about the direction of the organization and different policies that we'd like to see implemented. That helped to bring about, for example, the Department of Outreach from the committee, and all of that change fostered, it originated from that committee of the whole. I see a town meeting being something very similar, where we invite students to have an active say in what their student government looks like, what their student government does, how their elected leaders, whether it be the president or their at-large representatives, react to various events and push for various policies on campus, interact with administrators. Giving students the chance to actively participate in their student government can only, in my mind, encourage that sort of participation on the state and federal levels as well, when students graduate and hopefully continue contributing in that way. So I'd see a lot of questions and general discussion beyond just a prepared speech, if you will. As was mentioned, I think that's generally just a spectacle. I can send you the reading if you want. It's a pretty good reading from our class. Like I said, highly recommend civic and community engagement as a minor, and CivComm 211N. I think it is double listed as CAS or something like that. Unfortunately, I'm not paid to say that. I just highly recommend it. Should be. Maybe I should talk to someone about that. Ethan, do you have another question?
No, I apologize. My hand was still raised.
You're okay. It's always funny when I see not funny, but not that you're funny. What am I trying to say? If we were in person, you know, having your hand raised and forgetting that it's up raised would be a funny sight, but totally normal in Zoom. Cool beans. Any other questions? Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us for this second press conference. Like I said, an exciting tradition in the works, and hopefully will continue to grow with time. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesdays.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you again for having us. Have a nice day.
Bye, guys.
Take care.